My name is Sally McIntyre. I'm the general manager at Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. And the lady whose picture is on the screen there is Shannon Gutowski. She is our communications coordinator. And we're going to be hosting today's session with you. Just so you know, she is recording it because not everybody who wanted to participate was able to at this time slot. So we are going to be posting this onto our website so that people who weren't able to join us today can follow along subsequently and hear the Q&A that happens. So with this, I'm actually going to close out my visage so that I can just go straight to the PowerPoint. And so you'll just hear my voice going forward. If anybody has bandwidth issues, I suggest you collapse your video and just keep on the audio. And I am going to mute everybody, or if you could mute yourselves perhaps for during the presentation. We're going to keep all the Q&A to the very end, okay? So thank you. And now I'm going to stop sharing my video and I'm going to share my screen. Okie doke. So wave your hand if you can see my PowerPoint presentation. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, all right. So today's agenda, we're going to just start with a bit of introductions, then move to some background information and speak about how we're currently managing the K&P Trail, get into the details of the structural assessment and some of the cost and remedies, and then discuss next steps. And as I said, have some time for Q&A at the end. So I've already introduced myself and Shannon. Not on the phone today are Ross Ferguson, our operations manager, who I think several of you would be familiar with and have dealt with on this project. He's in the bush somewhere right now enjoying all this snow. And Tashi Devati is the engineer. I just wanted you to know what firm did the work for us, HP Engineering. We've been very pleased with their work. And so they're the folks whose material I'm going to be presenting to you. So now just to get an idea of who's on the line with us, we're going to call up a little poll. It's all anonymous. To participate in the poll, you just hopefully can click on, or if you're not able to see, there is a place at the bottom of your screen where it says polling. So if it's anonymous, so if you just want to click on that and let us know what your interest is in the K&P. Once we've seen that most people have completed it, we'll close it out and have a look at the results. So Shannon, do we only have 4 people on the line right now?
No, we have 8. One's on the phone, so they may not be able to vote.
Okay, so I'm looking for a total of 6 possibly?
Yes.
And if you're not comfortable responding, that's fine. Oh, I see number 6. Okay, so if you want to end the polling or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll share results.
Yes, please. So that's interesting. We see that there's a good mix of usage of the trail. Almost everybody uses it though for some form of recreation. And half of you are representing a recreation club. And then most of you are from the County of Lanark, but we also have representation from Renfrew and Frontenac today. So that's really great to see. So it's just interesting to know who's on the line. And so thank you for sharing in that. So to close out the poll, if you just click on the X at the right-hand corner, it should take you back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so carrying on then. So a bit of background, as I imagine many of you know, the bridge and the trail was originally the railway built, the Kingston-Pembroke Railway from 1870s. It didn't actually make its way all the way up. The Pembroke or Petawawa, now I'm confused on which P it was, but in any event, didn't all get built. And sadly, by the mid of part of last century, it was starting to get phased out. MVCA initially leased this section of the trail and then actually purchased it in 1990. As many of you would know, as active users of it, it crosses numerous lakes and rivers and contains a diversity of wetlands and uplands habitat, and that's why the MVCA purchased it in 1990. So shortly after purchasing it, we established it as a conservation area. And generally speaking, conservation areas are established for the protection from hazard lands. So if we have areas of unstable slope or frequent flooding. So back some time ago now, we had actually expropriated some properties that suffered huge inundations on the Clyde River for the protection from hazard lands. But more commonly, we established conservation areas for natural and cultural heritage, for appreciation and recreation. So shortly after acquiring this property in 1990, we undertook a master planning exercise. And at the end of the day, it was agreed that the K&P conservation area was to provide a year-round multiple use recreational trail for the use and enjoyment of the public and to promote a conservation ethic towards our natural resources. So from the MVCA's perspective, this is why the land was purchased and how we're to manage it on a go-forward basis. The trail is actually used for many other purposes as well. In addition to recreational purposes, some people use it to access seasonal or permanent properties. People use it for logging extraction. Locally, it's an off-road north-south route that people use. And lastly, there is a utility line that is accessed via the trail. In the operations and maintenance of the trail, they've been a long-standing partner. The use of the trail as off-road transportation route has been a matter of concern for decades. You can see when you read the 1991 master plan that this was a major issue of discussion back then, and it continues to be an area of discussion today. One of the significant variables that we've been dealing with since the 1990s is when the province cut funding for operations and maintenance of conservation areas. So that affected this trail. Initially, there used to be washrooms and shelters and camp and picnic sites that MVCA established there. But following the funding cuts in the 90s, those additional kind of conservation area uses had to cease because we simply didn't have the resources to continue them. So currently, MVCA with the Snow Road Snowmobile Club, that should be a C, we focus on really maintaining it for the safety of recreational vehicles. That's our focus. And in the fall of last year, we commissioned an inspection of the bridge because we did have concerns about the bridge condition and its use by a variety of other vehicles. So talking about the bridge, this is a summary of the bridge. So it's 11 meters long. It has a riding surface. It's a single lane of roughly 3.9 meters. It's supported by 2 steel girders and a decking of 8x8 unanchored timbers. Those timbers are, I will emphasize, I wanted to underline the word unanchored. So they're just resting there on their own weight. The railings that were in place and have since been replaced were 4x4 timbers. The abutments is a grouted stone masonry about 10 meters high and 6.4 meters wide. The ballast wall that sits on top of that is cast in place concrete, as is the embankment that holds back the fill in behind. So I'm just going to show some photos. For some of you, this will be very familiar, but maybe you only see it in the winter time. So this is what it looked like in the fall, and you can see those railings. This is what was primarily giving us concern. And as Ross used to say, this is what keeps me up at night, Sally. There is a side view, so you can see the embankments, the abutments, the girders. And you can see as well, it's a significant drop down into the Clyde. There's a face view of the abutment and the embankments on one side. And here you can see the underside, and you can see the spacing on those, the 8x8s, and the fact that they're not anchored into place. So suffice to say that when the engineers looked at this, they said, plain and simply, it didn't meet current standards, and that wasn't a surprise. But one of the things that did surprise us was, the nature of the codes that we'd have to meet. One of the key items they identified to us that I highlight in the red there at the bottom is, because the bridge is so high, we're not allowed to build or bring it up to the guidelines for low volume roads. So we're going to be held to the standard of the Canadian Highway Bridge Design Code. And this is an important finding of their report. So it's kind of a either or. Either you're building to the Canadian Highway Bridge Design Code, or you're building to MTO's guidelines for the design of snowmobile bridges, because of the height of the bridge doesn't allow us to design to the bridges for low volume roads. So in more detail, they found the steel girders were sufficient to support all intended loadings to the full CHBDC loading. Well, that was good to hear. So, because that would be a biggie if you had to change the girders. However, this timber deck is not structurally to meet the CHBDC loading, even if we anchored them down. So even if we took all those 8x8 and anchored them down, it's not structurally adequate to meet the federal code. The barriers, not surprisingly, were severely structurally deficient for all potential loadings, vehicle and pedestrian. And so you can see in the red there what the consultants recommended. In the interim, that we impose and post a load restriction, that we post hazard signs regarding the narrowing, and that we replace the decking, and that we replace the barriers on the bridge and add approach barriers to guide people to the bridge, because there's nothing preventing people from going to the side of the bridge as they approach it from north or south. So in December, we did a detailed design for the railings, because in order for us to keep the bridge open this winter, we felt it essential that we replace the railings on the bridge. And so MVCA commissioned the engineer to do the detailed design, and then the Snow Road Snowmobile Club provided the labor and materials and made it happen in quick order and a few good days of sunshine. And so thank you very much to Snow Road Snowmobile Club for partnering with us on that. And that was terrific, because without that, we wouldn't have been able to keep the bridge open this winter. We also posted and advertised the 5-ton load restriction, and we added the warning signs regarding the narrowing. So those safety measures have been put in place that allow us to comfortably keep it open for this season. And here you can see some of the photos taken afterwards. But here on the left side, you can see where there's absolutely nothing preventing somebody to going off the edge of the road and into the gully there. So we do need to add approach barriers as well down the road. But this is a beautiful, much safer railing for all concerned, and we're very pleased that that got installed in December. And there you can see the weight limit that's been imposed. Oh, we have a couple of more people joining us. Okie doke. So moving on. So these are the price estimates, the range that the engineers put to us depending on what standard we build to. So for the decking, if we just wanted to have the decking used and in compliance with the snowmobile guidelines, then it's in the order of 30,000. But depending on the nature of the design to allow for a full range of vehicles to use it, the costs go up as high as 125,000. The railings, the work that was done by the Snowmobile Club, meets the requirements for that use, but not for use for larger vehicles. So for example, it would not meet the requirements, quite frankly, for the 5-ton vehicles that we're allowing on it right now. So it is a temporary railing if the decision over time is taken to allow larger vehicles to continue use of the bridge. To bring it up to standard so that all other sorts of motorized vehicles could use it would require installation of an all steel railing, and that estimated cost is 36,000. And then these other works, for instance, the approach barriers that I mentioned and some other on-site works would be another 75,000. And as it says at the top, this excludes engineering fees. So obviously the detailed design of any of these works would require engineering drawings. So just stepping back for a moment, I just wanted to share with you some of MVCA's objectives. So for the bridge, what we're trying to figure out right now, and the reason why we're having these consultations, is what level of service do we want that bridge going forward? Do we want it just to be for recreational vehicles? Do we want people to be able to use it for their regular vehicles to access their properties? Do we want it to be able to be continued for use for logging? And something I just want to clarify right now is I'm just talking about the bridge, not the trail at this point. So because we got to figure out sooner rather than later what standard we're going to build that bridge to. Then once we've identified, what level of service is desired, is where the funding is going to come from. The Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority has developed a 10-year capital program. We've done a needs assessment and priority setting. Not surprisingly, a lot of the funds, over half of our 10-year capital program, is going into our water control structures, the dams that we own and operate in the watershed. And we're going to have to take out 2 major multi-year loans to enable us to do that. So as an organization, I'll just be candid in saying we don't have a lot of money to do extensive work on this bridge as things stand, but this is still open for discussion at the board. And as many of you would be aware, our board is made up of representatives from the municipalities in the watershed. So we are hopeful that 1 or more players can come to the table and support the cost to upgrade the bridge. In the meantime, we got to confirm about how this bridge is going to be used outside of winter operations. So as I mentioned, the railing was sufficient to allow for recreational use to continue, but I'm not sure at this point how we're going to operate the bridge come springtime, whether or not we're going to close it to other vehicles or whether we're just going to maintain the 5-ton limit. And then ultimately, as monies become available, we hope to ultimately replace the decking and upgrade the railing if needed to meet whatever desired level of service is agreed upon for that bridge. Now, over the long term, the board had identified this as an asset that we needed to either work in partnership with the counties or other partners, or otherwise sell the asset because it has been an underfunded asset for us for many years now, ever since those funding cuts occurred in the 90s. It's a long trail, and as many of you know, it has multiple water courses that inundate it at various times a year, and it can get washouts and the like. And we've been very pleased to be able to, work with the Snowmobile Club on it. But our feeling is that we're not able to invest the time and resources that we would like to at the given current funding constraints. So at this point, I'd like to do a couple of more polls if I could. So Shannon, I'll turn it over to you.
And it should be up for everybody to see now.
So the first question has to do with the bridge, and the second one with respect to the trail. And this is a multiple choice, so you can check one or all, or some variation.
We're just waiting for a couple more people if they're able to.
So Shannon, you said there's a couple of people on phones though that won't be able to
vote. Yeah, so we're at 8, so I will go ahead and end this poll and share the results.
Right. So not surprisingly, there's a high degree of agreement for continued recreational use, and there is also definitely support for continued use for passenger vehicles, boats and trailers, and lumbering. So I'm not surprised by these results, because definitely that's how the trail has been used for decades. So this doesn't surprise me at all, but it's nice to see it confirmed. So thank you everybody for sharing those results. And just if you click in the upper right X, then we'll continue on. So right now, the consultations that we're going through is to engage as many people as possible in those questions that I just put to you, particularly as it relates to the bridge. So, oh, wait a minute. We didn't do poll 3, did we? I'm going to go back. We did poll 2, but we didn't do poll 3. So Shannon, if you do poll 3, please.
Yeah, launching it right now. And again, it is multiple choice.
And you can definitely check more than one.
And you might have to scroll down a bit, as there are 10 options to pick from.
I think we're just waiting for one more. There we go.
Yeah, and there we go. All right, I will end the poll and share results.
So not surprisingly, as owners of the asset, the majority of you feel we need to be paying for this, and I understand that completely. and I just want to assure you that we're not looking to avoid costs, but we are looking to share the costs. So yeah, so some of you see this as being of interest to the local municipality as well as the county. and to the logging companies, as well as the province of Ontario. So an interesting mix there, to be sure. So really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. Okay, so if you want to just click on the X, I'll go back to that PowerPoint. Okay, so as I mentioned, those are the sorts of questions that we're posing to people through these consultations. And we're hoping to get comments back by March 19th, with the goal of coming from us reporting to our board later this spring. I have begun some discussions with the counties about potentially partnering on funding for this. If your organization is a potential partner and you think you may be able to contribute, I would be interested in hearing that from you before March 19th, because to the degree that partner organizations come forward will help inform the board's decision on what the art of the possible is, or in this case, the art of the affordable. If there are others who you think may be able to contribute to the funding of the upgrade to the bridge, that would be great. If you have thoughts about how we should manage it in the interim, so between now and when the upgrades are made, if you could add comments on that. And if there's other things that I haven't raised that you think the MBCA should be thinking about and considering, please, by all means, whatever makes sense to you to add into your comments, we'd appreciate it. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for some Q&A, and Shannon is going to be moderating the Q&A. For those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom, there is a feature if you go to the bottom of your screen. And I think I have to stop sharing for that, maybe. Do I need to stop sharing for that feature to come up, Shannon?
I'm not sure, but basically it just participants can raise their hands, which...
Yeah, so if you go to participants at the bottom of your screen and click on that, you'll see that all the names come up and your name should be near the top. And then it should give you a little option of a hand, a little blue hand. And if you click on that blue hand, it raises your hand and Shannon can identify you and she'll ask you to unmute and ask your question. So I'm going to start the video again. So happy to answer any questions people have. So are there any hands up?
There are no hands up. Oh, there we go. Snow Country Snowmobile Region is what it's coming up as.
Hi, it's Terry Vaudry.
Hi,
just
Terry.
a question. How are you?
Well, thank you.
So I've dealt with a lot of bridges over the years. And it was helpful to see what the original master plan was and just an overview of how Mississippi Valley came to own the K&P section. And I found it interesting that the master plan basically said it was for recreational trail use. Somehow we're getting all kinds of vehicle traffic on here, which is probably degrading the trail surface, and it's causing you a lot of issues now, because now you're into MTO guidelines on bridges to offset that vehicle use. So would it not be something to think about to try and limit the scope of the trail use, sir? To get back to the original intent of the master plan?
Yeah, so back in 1990, when they were working on that master plan, I would say there's several pages dedicated in the master plan to that very debate and discussion. And at that time, based upon the feedback that the board at that time received from the community, it was decided to maintain access for all of those uses. We're now 30 years on. All of those uses have continued to be in place. I'm not sure that we'd get a very different answer today, but the board's response might be different. I don't know, particularly given the condition of the bridge and the significant difference in cost to upgrade it to recreational use versus Canadian code use.
Yep. And it will be a big cost. I noticed you're using the 2000 M&R bridge guideline, which I'm not sure M&R actually ever adopted.
So that's the one referenced by the engineers. And I think that's the one that, and the emphasis on the word guidelines. So, and that would not be unique for the province to issue guidelines that everybody starts to use, but maybe don't have the force of law behind them.
Yeah, because there actually is a snowmobile bridge guideline from back in the 90s that was the official guideline.
Okay.
I know MRF is hanging their hat on this new bridge guideline.
Okay.
But if you talk to folks in the know, the 2000 guideline was never approved. Or I know everybody's using it, but maybe incorrectly. Would it not be time for Mississippi Valley to enter into discussions with the county about acquiring the K&P?
And in fact, I have begun those discussions with both Frontenac and Lanark. So those discussions have begun, but there's many discussions yet to be had. So one of the reasons we did this structural assessment is because, in fairness to the counties, we needed to understand the liabilities associated with the asset we were potentially looking to sell to them. So we knew we were going to have to make some investment to ready the asset for sale and to get a fair market price for the asset. So that, in part, and Ross's sleepless nights are why we did the structural assessment. Was we really needed, we knew that there was a risk there. We wanted to understand the risk, and we wanted to be able to quantify it and get a price for it, for either to do the work ourselves or to consider that cost in transferring the asset to another, or a lease arrangement, or whatever, you know, MVCA might ultimately do.
Thanks.
And next up is Ian.
Hi, Ian, you're
sorry.
going to have to unmute yourself.
Okay,
There we go.
The adjacent landowners on both sides of the bridge, if those properties were loggable, we'll say, do they have exits out of the area on the K&P or otherwise that they can take their natural resource, the logs, out of their property without having to cross the bridge?
Yes, I mean, it means that they have to go in and out the same direction. So it means they need to be able to turn around on their property to, you know, to extract the lumber or the logs. So it just means you come in from the south, you leave from the south. You come in from the north, you leave from the north. So it's depending on what your destination is, ultimately, that may or may not be an encumbrance.
Okay, so I know that you put a 5-ton limit on the bridge. Have they been the loggers? I'm not sure if they're logging right now or this winter or this fall, or have they been respecting the bridge and not going across it because you put a 5-ton limit on the signs?
The last I spoke to Ross, we had no requests this season for secondary use permits.
Okay.
So my assumption is that nobody's using the trail this season, or at least not yet. But we haven't gone out to site and verified that. And I don't know if anybody on the line has had any observations in that regard. If anybody has seen logging trucks on the trail, I would certainly be interested in knowing that.
Okay. You said I'm sorry, one last question. You said the fair market value, if Mississippi Valley is going to sell the asset, wouldn't it be best to get it into the county's hands because they have a program in place where they want to do build their trail systems for recreational use where identified going forward. So it would only make sense to make a deal with the counties so that they can take care of this asset.
Agreed. Yes, and the board has endorsed that, and that's why I've had the conversations with both the County of Lanark and the County of Frontenac about this, because that plan is in place and it's recognized that it probably is best that it be managed as one, unit. And so I agree. Terry, did you have another question? Because I see your hand still up. That's the other thing about these hands. You have to click on it again if you want to lower your hand. Shannon, do we have other questions?
No, I don't think Terry could quite hear, so I think I can lower his hand. Okay. And no other hands at the moment, no.
Okay.
Shannon, I can't find my hand thing here.
That's okay.
So my question is, so I'm a landowner, but not as far up. I'm in Folger. And we've done a lot of work on the K&P personally, donated culverts, stuff like that. To cut access off to vehicle traffic, because it's been used to get in and out of properties for so many years, since the tracks were tore up back in the 60s. I think you're gonna have a lot of pressure against people that own camp properties. Some of them are more year-round properties now. There are people that are living off the grid back there and are using the K&P as their access. So we didn't find out about this until just last night with the CARP paper, but we didn't see any notifications to anybody up in the area. There's not many of us left around in the winter, but I did make some calls this morning to just notify people about the meeting.
So yeah, unfortunately, we weren't able to get all the addresses and names for everybody up and down the K&P. So we weren't able to do first class mail notifications to everybody, but we did put the notices in the paper and have tried to use the mediums out there. So it's unfortunately you didn't find out till yesterday, but we do have some time. And to the extent that all of you are able to use your networks to get the word out, please do. You're right. The people who have been using the trail to access their property, as you said, in some cases for decades now, they probably have some sort of rights of use. It's a question of does it allow them to use it for all types of vehicles? It's one thing to have right of access across a piece of land, but does it have to be using a particular type of vehicle? So I'm not disagreeing with you that landowners who back onto the K&P and who have been using it probably have rights of use. It's the type of use that I think is in question. And so absolutely we need to hear from the people who own property adjacent to the K&P.
Another resource for monies for maybe not the bridge, but for the trail upgrade, I think should come from Hydro. When Hydro came in and did the center tower, they destroyed more of the trail with the amount of equipment and trucks that came up there. And really should have, when they crushed the culverts, they should have been made to replace them at that time. It didn't happen, and now we're dealing with the poor trail between Levant Station and Folger, which is probably one of the worst sections along the trail now. We are trying to get it back up. Just landowners are trying to get it back up and to do travelable, that no one's going to get hurt, four-wheelers, vehicles or whatever. But I think Hydro should be confronted about some of the costs in bringing the trail back up to standards.
Right. Brian, do you have a sense of when that work occurred?
The hydro tower was, I think, 3 years ago.
Oh, that recently?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a chat with Ross about that.
Yeah, I know Ross is, aware about it and that. So yeah, we'd spoke to Ross a few times about it. There's some other spots on the trail that are starting to wash out that we're gonna have to, that you guys have to start to looking at, because they're starting to get dangerous for the amount of vehicles, Skidoos and ATVs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's about it for me.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
And Sally, we have a question from Sean, who's having some audio issues. He's just wondering if we've had discussions with the County of Renfrew.
Not yet. I have a contact name though, but I haven't reached out to Renfrew yet. If any of you have a contact there that you think I should be connecting with, please share that with me. That would be great.
Have you had any discussions with Ottawa Valley ATV Club and their trail funding money?
I haven't. I believe Ross has. I guess our challenge at this point is just understanding what level of commitment people can make for capital versus operating and maintenance costs, and short-term versus a long-term commitment. Because one of our concerns is if annually we never know where the money's coming from. It's very hard to operate an asset if year over year you don't know where the money's coming from. I think everybody can appreciate that, right? So it's really, the goal is to structure something that's going to be sustainable over time, so that we can actually do asset management planning on the asset, that we can do that full assessment of the length of the 40 kilometers, know where the issues are, prioritize them, budget for them, and actually implement a capital renewal plan, right? And then make sure that we're all on the same page for the O&M, what's going to happen year in, year out, who's going to be on the hook for it, all that sort of stuff. So it's trying to secure long-term funding and partner agreements that I think is where MVC's at.
No other hands up right now, Sally.
Okay, well, we're at 5:47, and this has been great. So if people do think of other things that they want to make us aware of, if you have contact names, if you want to spread the word about this, please do. The deadline is March 19th, and afterwards we'll be assembling all the comments that we hear back. If you want to have one-on-one conversations with me about financial matters, if your club or organization may be able to support us, that would be great. Please feel free to reach out to me. And I hope you wrote down the address at the end there. It was info@mvc.on.ca. So if you just want to reach out to us at that address, we'll make sure that it gets into the right hands, and that we'll be able to include your comments going forward in our report to the board. So unless there's any further hands going up, no further hands?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for participating this evening, and I wish you all a lovely evening. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Right now.